And now, your host and my dad, Matt Reiner.
Welcome back to the Future Proof Advisor podcast. Today, I don't know, we have more knowledge than we've ever had. We have more knowledge than the past. We have more information to consume than ever before. It's both, to me, exciting and scary. But what I'm struggling with is that despite all this knowledge, I think that we still struggle on acting on it. And I just was trying to understand. What I want to explore today is, why is that the case? Why is it so hard for us to act on all this information? The it starts with me in a story with an Amazon box by the back door of my house. We opened the Amazon box, and we have our mud room that we have in our house, and then right by our mud room is our door to our garage. And in our garage is where our recycling bin is. And so when, we're in the house and we're just like moving frantically, we open up our Amazon boxes, which we get every day for some unknown reasons. I don't know what's in them, but we put it by the back door, and then you take it out to the recycling bin. This one box stayed there for like 7 days. 7 days. And like, I kept on walking by it. I was rationalizing, like, why is it still there? Like, why don't I just take it? And so one day I decided just like to pick it up and take it literally 8 steps to the recycling bin, open the recycling bin, and put the box in. And as I stood out there, I was like, why did I not do that? Like, what was underlying that? Like, I knew that I should take it out. Like, I had the insight and information. I had the ability. Like, why didn't I do it? And it's there where I explored this concept. We have so much ability now. We have so much knowledge and motivation for that ability. Why is it so hard for us to act? If it's so hard for me to act on something that simple, taking an Amazon box to the recycling bin, 8 steps. Gosh, I wonder how difficult it is for us to act on information that makes us change the way that we work. A little bit scary in my mind, I think. We know we need to evolve as humans, as a business, right? And the thing is that this gap to evolve is not informational. We have all the information of, trends and, how to evolve and everything. It's psychological. Like, I think about this in our industry, in our business, like, for us to sit here and think, I just read this piece on Twitter actually around AI. And it was this guy, he wrote a really long piece, and he's basically saying, like, I haven't talked to my family. I've been in AI. I haven't talked to my family about this, but I need to come out and say, like, AI is changing everything. And this is how, and this is why. He alluded to it as saying, like, this is like the COVID moment, right? Where, like, in COVID, like, early days, like, it was happening over in other places and it wasn't going to come to us. It wasn't going to impact us. And like, if someone like in December or January was seeing what was happening in China before March of 2020, and they were buying like all this toilet paper and stockpiling toilet paper, you'd be like, you are crazy. And then it all just like hit us. And like, that's how he alluded to this AI moment, is like, that is starting to happen. Like, it's going to hit us. And I think about that as our industry. Like, we talk about it. We know that there's things happening underneath. Like, we're starting to talk about AI. We know that organic growth is slower. We know that it's inorganic. We know that PE money's flowing in. We know that rates are rising, or trending higher over time. We know we should be adopting AI and creating efficiencies and diversifying beyond just an AUM fee model. We like know all this, and all the trends are out there. The research is out there. We talk about it at conferences. I've had many conferences, but the thing is like, we don't act on it. Or not as maybe deeply as maybe my gauge of whether we should act on it is there. Maybe my gauge is different, and that may be fair. But I don't see us acting on it as a whole, especially when I just was speaking at a conference and I asked the group of billion-dollar firms and more, billion-dollar and above, how many of you have a strategic plan for AI over the next 5 years? What's your guess? If your guess was less than 40%, you're right. We know this is happening. We're avoiding it. And so it's not like we're not smart people. We are super intelligent. It's not a character flaw. It's not like you're wrong or like I look at you poorly if you don't. It's a psychological thing. It's a psychological human flaw. We have this ability to understand and consume and see things coming. And we have the ability to access more information than any generation before us. But the thing is that this gap that's happening is not informational, it's psychological, right? We go to these conferences. I've been there. I do it all the time. I sit in these conference sessions. And I'm like, wow, that's I get it. Like, I understand. I understand it. Like, I'm going to go do that. I'm gonna go change. Like I listened to a podcast. I'm listening to an Elon Musk podcast right now. I'm like, man, he's so smart. Like I'm gonna do a lot of the things that he just said. Reality is, I then park my car, walk into my office, and forget everything he just said. I'm like, now I got to put this email out. I got to go to this meeting. I got to do that. Right. We never take the time to use that knowledge we consume from books, podcasts, or conferences to actually rethink how we work. And it's not like we are flawed people. We're not lazy people. We're just human beings. We're human beings. Our brains are wired to hold us back from acting on this new information. There's your excuse. When anybody asks you why, say, it's just how I'm wired. I'm sorry. And that's really hard to argue because psychologically it's true. Like biologically it's true. The human mind prioritizes immediate comfort, right? That fire that we need to put out, that email that we need to respond to, that client phone call that we need to make, right? There's always something more pressing because our minds want that immediate gratification. There's this long-term, short-term problem. Our minds want instant gratification. We want to get that dopamine hit now, right away. So we're going to go do it. We're going to get this really great dopamine hit. But if I have to now invest time into something that I'm not going to really get a dopamine hit for until 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I'm like, ugh, hard. It's the same reason we're all talking about why doesn't the younger generation save? Why isn't it, my 25-year-old son or daughter saving for retirement? I'm telling them to. 30-year-old daughter or son, I'm telling them they should. Why aren't they doing it? It's because you're literally telling them to do something, to save for something, to access it a lifetime away. The brain's like, thank you. Come again. Like, no chance. They don't want to do it again. They don't want to do it, right? They know that they need to do it. They understand. They've seen all the models. They've seen it with you, but the brain can't comprehend it no matter what you do. It's abstract. It's uncertain. It's hard to prioritize. Peter Gollitzer did a study in a meta-analysis that revealed goal intentions. What it meant was like statements like, I intend to grow AUM by 20% this year, or I intend to save 15% more. That intention accounts for only 20 to 30% of your actual behavior. That means that your behavior is driven by 70 to 80% of something else, right? Have a goal explains less than a third of what you actually want or what you're actually going to do. What really matters, and the reason is that a goal tells you what you want, but it fails to specify when, it fails to specify where, and it fails to specify how. Very important aspects of reaching a goal. We set the goals at the beginning of the year and then we forget them by March. And then we look back in December like, well, maybe I hit them, maybe I didn't. The goals that we tend to hit the most are the ones that we continue to focus on and that we've set intentional behaviors behind. And that's the key. That's where we really should be thinking about, right? That's the missing link is implementation intention. A really difficult one. Say that 5 times fast. Implementation intentions. This is the plan. This is like the if this, then that scenario. If I get $100, then I will automatically pull $20 out. That's the automatic savings, right? If this happens, then I will do that. If a client calls me, then I will ask them for a referral. And if I take these actions, then that will lead, if I do those and accumulate those throughout the year, then that will lead to me reaching my goal. But too often we state we want to do this goal, but we don't state the plan and the intention of how we're going to get to that goal. And that's where the intentionality becomes. Focus on the action, not the goal, right? And what, if we go back to that conference example that I have, that's what that is sharing psychologically for us is this illusion of competence idea. When we sit in a session that's all about AI workflows or new processes, our brain, being really nerdy, our brain releases dopamine as if we are working. Because we're like learning something new. Learning feels like work. It feels like progress. The reality, though, is it's like implementation valley of death. Implementation valley of death, right? It's maybe something that like LSU football can use, and they think they call it like the valley or whatever they call it at their football stadium. Implementation valley of death. What this leads to is that when we're in this environment like a conference, or we're in our car listening to a podcast, where we don't have the noise of people coming into our office with fires, of our clients calling us, of our email blowing up, of the next thing on our calendar, we feel like we can do anything. We feel everything's possible. And so we have this vision of reality and it all makes sense. But then once we get to trying to do it, we realize that we don't actually know it as well as we assumed by just listening to it. Because listening to it makes us feel like we're able to do it. We're able to retrieve it, but we're not able to utilize it and leverage it from that standpoint. You know, I this really came to light when I was building our technology company, Benjamin. I talk about it a lot on this podcast because it was one of the most influential experiences of my life to learn from. And so there's so many stories. I have an 87-page dossier on what I've learned from that business. And one of the things that I learned is that when we started out that business, we wanted to replicate another business. We saw a business and we're like, wow, let's go replicate that business. If we can do that, that would be great. And what we did is we analyzed that business front and back. I knew everything about that business. And so we had the plan to go try to build that business. And we failed. You want to know why? Because we hit hurdles and learnings that I didn't know how to adjust for, because what I was looking at was the finished product of a business. What I didn't see was the process and learnings and the abilities of overcoming hurdles that they experienced to get to that final product. And when you listen to someone in a book or a podcast or at a conference, they're telling you the outcome. They're not telling you the experience. And to be honest, they're not going to be able to tell you the experience because we have the inability to remember all the bits and pieces of it, right? That's the illusion of memory. We've talked about it before. We don't remember everything. We may remember bits and fragments, but we don't remember it all. And so the only way to do that, the only way to overcome that, the implementation value of death is to do. Learn by doing. You got to create that time. We've got to figure that out. We've got to go do. We can't just learn. We got to go do. You know, I think about Kodak, for instance, right? Kodak, everybody thinks that Kodak was like, how did they miss it, right? They failed because they didn't see digital, the digital era coming. And that is completely false. They actually invented the technology that disrupted them. They invented it. In 1975, their engineer, Steve Sasson, he invented the first digital camera. It was the size of a toaster oven, granted, so it didn't work really, but he invented the first digital camera. In market research in 1981 projected that digital would replace film in 10 to 20 years. So let's just use this timeline real quick. 75, Kodak builds the first digital camera. 81, research comes out that says digital will replace film in 10 to 20 years. What did Kodak do? Stayed with film. Why? Because it was their cash cow. Digital wasn't going to make any money in the interim, and they didn't want to disrupt and cannibalize the business that they were in today. And they felt they had runway. They felt they had runway until they didn't. Digital would have cannibalized their hard margin business of film, and they let their runway, they projected out that it would be 20 years, shorter than that. They feared losing their certain profits. They feared the idea of transitioning to something that was a little bit less certain. And so the idea is that having this knowledge alone doesn't guarantee action. Actually, comfort kills execution. They knew it, but they were comfortable. Comfort kills execution. They reasoned that digital would just be another way to print photos. They made a hypothesis, a thesis, and they never tested it. That's the challenge. We can make these predictions, but if we're not running small tests, we're not going to learn. A hypothesis isn't necessarily the right thing. The hypothesis only works when you're running a test with it. They fundamentally misunderstood. They had everything. Insight, information, and the product. They even had the product. The toaster oven camera. They had it. But they weren't able to execute on it. They didn't act because they were comfortable in what they knew. And I think about this, like, what does this mean for our business? Like, what does this mean for RIAs? What does this mean for the future-proof advisor? Right? I think that our business, we're comfortable right now. We're comfortable with this AUM business. And I think that sometimes these new business models that spur up, they just get shunned aside. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They're new. And what I think that for the future-proof advisor, what we try to do is say, well, they may have something here. Let's look at it. And the reason that we kind of push it away is because what the business that we are in, remember, it's taken us 10, 15, 20, 30 years to build this business. The amount that we are generating and the ability of capital that's generated in that part of the business is so much greater than anything new that has started. So we want to focus on that cash cow like Kodak and avoid all these smaller things that are it's just a waste of time. It's only generating X revenue, which is a 50th of the revenue that we're generating over here. So let's just focus over here and not waste our time over there. And the future-proof advisor says, well, no, let's look at it. Let's just change our mindset as opposed to dismissing this idea. Let's change our mindset of saying what is expected. Maybe we explore that and let that continue to run. How can we make that run efficiently? Because does it meet the trends of the generations that we're serving today and potentially in the future, our future generations? And is that something there? And so I think that we worry about like the small thing not being up to the scale, but remember that the thing that you're looking at the scale was built over generations, decades, and years. And nothing happens as big as what we have built overnight. And for us to have that expectation is the real root of needing that mindset shift, right? You have to focus on these new ideas and have intentional mentality around them to get these small things to be big, like, and it's incremental progress. Let's not just focus on like, hey, I started it. Why is it not being a $1 billion company? Right? I started it. Now it's like generating 100,000. Like, that's great. It's like, I think back to my dad, like, wow, this is bigger than I ever thought. I had the 200 million and we're just going to keep working and we'll see what happens. Now we're at 400 million. Now we're at 800 million. Now we're at 8 billion, right? It didn't happen overnight. It was incremental progress. And, I think that the idea is that to make this incremental progress, we have to realize that buying technology, buying software isn't executing solutions. We need systems, not just goals. We need systems to do that, right? I think about, look at the industry right now. Like, Michael Kitcey's landscape map is like, I need like a magnifying glass to look at it. It's like so big. And that's great because I love that there's innovation happening in our space, that people are starting and building companies that are in our space focused on wealth management. But the challenge is that we now think that that is like an easy button to solve all these problems, to help us better execute, to better innovate, right? And we mistake that buying the software is solving the problem, but buying the tool is the goal intention. That's like setting a goal of 20% of AUM. Buying the tool is like, oh yeah, now we're doing financial planning. But the real work doesn't happen until after you bought the tool. That's where the implementation intention happens. That's where you need to focus on the systems, the processes, and changing the ways and behaviors of how we work to get there, right? If we don't, then that's where shelfware comes from. That's not software, shelfware, meaning that you have software that sits on a shelf, basically unutilized to the fullest potential. And so what happens in that situation is that we, as advisors, and I went through this cycle and I've seen it happen with other advisors, we go through the cycle where we're not seeing an ROI on the technology. We get frustrated with the technology. We then say that technology doesn't live up to what we were expecting. But the problem is not the technology. It's us. It's how we were thinking about incorporating the technology. Did we take the time and intention and effort to incorporate it into the business the way that we needed to? And did we even really need the technology, or were we hoping that technology was going to be the silver bullet? There is no technology that the silver bullet is. The only thing that's a silver bullet is how we implement it. And there is no one size fits all technology. This is like the best in breed technologies or just like a all-in-one technology. That may be for another podcast, but we have to spend time with the technology. We have to spend time with the implementation process to get the value out of it. The truth is that for us to continue to close the gap between knowing and doing is that we have to kind of run our business with the same rigor that we expect our clients to run their financial lives by. We set them up a plan, we spend time on it, and we expect them to take the necessary actions to ensure that plan works. When they don't, there's a frustration, right? We put all this work in, we had the right plan, but they're not doing it. Why? We got to look at that. And the reason why they're not doing it may be the same reason why we aren't acting in our own business. You want to know why? We're all human. We're all human. Clients aren't anybody different. We're not better or different. We're human. And so what I look at is like there's this idea that I call the MAP framework, MAP, not named after myself. That would be egotistical, but the MAP framework. And it's three elements that must exist for the behavior to occur. MAP, M, motivation, the desire to do the behavior, right? I want a clean database to improve my valuation of my firm because I'm trying to sell it. Motivation, ability, the ease of doing it. If it's very difficult, if I have to click everywhere, that's not easy. And then P is the prompt, the trigger to do it, like a pop-up reminder or a task or like a ping, whatever it may be. And the core axiom is if the behavior doesn't occur, at least one of those three elements are non-existent. I think about this as like when we implemented a new CRM for our team, their motivation was from senior leadership. Senior leadership saw a vision for what they wanted. Motivation was there for them. There was no motivation. We did not create a motivation for our general team to do it. And then the ability to do it was a little bit difficult at the beginning. And there was no prompt for them to do it. And we always were frustrated. Like, let's do more training. Let's do this, more of that, more of that. But I think that failure to get that implementation at the beginning was on us as a leadership team because we didn't create the motivation. Lack of motivation to try to change behavior of other individuals. Think about clients. Like, what is their motivation? You're like, well, they want to have money in retirement. Yeah, but like that is, remember, so far away. What is their motivation today, tomorrow? How do we use this MAP framework to help motivate people, make it easy for them to do, and create the prompt for them to remember to do it? If we do all that, then we get the behavioral changes that change lives, change businesses, and allow us to continue to evolve our business, right? And if you're not getting like those adoptions, look at the MAP framework and be honest about it. It doesn't mean you're like wrong or bad. You're just human, right? James Clear says, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. We all have ambitious goals. Why do some people reach them and others don't? Not because they're better or have more ability, because they have better systems. They have a process and an implementation framework. We can all set the same goals, but I'll tell you the ones that will reach it if they tell me their systems that they're going to do and follow to reach it. Then I'll tell you who's going to reach their goals, right? So we need to spend more time, not just setting goals, but on the implementation of how we're going to achieve those goals. What are the actions and behaviors that we're going to have? It's the same thing with my Amazon box example. I thought I had the motivation. I like a clean house. I knew I had the ability. It's literally I'm strong enough to pick it up and walk there, thankfully. I kind of lacked the prompt. Like, I needed my wife to be like, Matt, get that box out of here. If I did that thing would have been gone in a second. That would have been gone in a second. I needed a prompt, and the motivation probably wasn't there highly because it was like, it's not bothering like a lot of it. It's like over here on the side, etc. And so I failed on the MAP framework there. And if our mental game keeps us from doing things that simple, then we've got to understand it to help us do things that are really difficult. And this future of our industry and how it's going to evolve is going to take challenge. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to take effort. And thing is that we value consistency with our past self more than adaptation to the future environment in the future world. Meaning that we value how we have been more than eagerness to go to what may be. That's the challenge. We think that like our memory, we rely on our memory of how things were to make decisions for what we need to do going forward because we rely on like what happened there. And so we use that memory to go forward. So if there's something new or something different to act upon, we're going to rely on our memory, which is, remember, memory, as much as we think we know it, remember everything perfectly, it's very fragmented. That's on all of us humans. And so that's what makes us drive decisions. But we have to be able to overcome that. We have to know that and be willing to step into that uncomfortable. And so where do I land on all this? What I land on this is to be intentional. Just understand this gap between knowing and doing, and know that it's not like you're behind or you're flawed. It's just that you're human, and accept what we are today, but know that we're not alone, and don't accept just stay in the status quo. What you are doing today is not necessarily what we will need to do tomorrow. And be sure that we're not operationalizing for what the world may not want in the future. So start today small. Start small. Maybe go try to adopt AI. Diversify your revenue in some way, or try to rethink your service model. Evolve before we're forced to. Be proactive as opposed to reactive. Let's not wait for disruption to happen. So that's today. With that, I say thank you. Thanks for spending time with me today. As always, like the episode. Please leave a comment, share it if you think it's worthy of sharing, and let's keep spreading and building this community together. So go out there and be part of the change that betters our industry. Stay well, be well, keep on exploring.